Yesterday we went over the list of the 22 governing faculties, but we stopped in the explanations of the last three, so I will rapidly repeat the 22 governing faculties. First, we find what we call the 6 sense faculties, which is in fact the 5 sense faculties plus mental faculty. Then we saw that based on body faculty, there are 2 other faculties, the masculine governing faculty and feminine governing faculty. That brings us to 8. Then we find governing faculty, that is life force faculty. Then there are the governing faculties of the 5 sensations. This brings us to 14. Then comes a group of 5, which is made up of governing faculty of confidence or trust, governing faculty of joyful perseverance, the governing faculty of remembrance, governing faculty of discernment, and governing faculty of meditative absorption. So that's a group of 5, which brings us to 19. And the last 3 are knowledge of all that has not been known. First one. Knowledge of all. Second one. And acquired omniscience. Third one. This is where we left off yesterday. We had just named them. And now we'll get some complementary explanations. So to begin, these 3 governing faculties are dissociated from factors for descent. They respectively correspond to the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. Meaning that the faculty, knowledge of all that has not been known, is the path of seeing. The faculty, knowledge of all, is the path of meditation or familiarization. And the faculty, acquired omniscience, is the path of no more learning. So that is a brief presentation of the 22 governing faculties. Yesterday we also gave the definition, what governing faculty is. It is what governs something, thus the name governing faculty. And now we'll go over a quick classification of these 22, which are material. The 5 sense faculties, the 5 faculties linked to sense objects, and the sex faculties, masculine and feminine faculties, which are based on body faculty. There are 7 that are material. Next, we will look at which are associated with sovereign mind. 14. The 5 sensations of mental faculty. And what we will often refer to as the group of 5, whose first is confidence. This is the group of 5 that we listed previously: confidence, joyful perseverance, remembrance, discernment, and meditative absorption. Often we refer to this, or it is referred to as, the group of 5 whose first is confidence. So in this classification, which governing faculties are associated with sovereign mind, we find the 5 sensations of mental faculty and the group of 5. He said there are 14, but we only have heard 10 so far. Then we'll look at one further one that is a conditioning phenomena dissociated from factors, conditioning phenomena non-associated with sovereign mind, which is life force faculty. So there are 7 that are material, 14 that are associated with sovereign mind, and 1 that is a conditioning phenomena non-associated by similarity with mind. In fact, when Khelzang Puntso listed which are associated with sovereign mind, he said that there are 14, and then he listed only 2 groups of 5. So 4 are missing from this list. So continuing on, Khelzang Puntso clarified again what this term governing faculty refers to. He said that for the Vaibhashika, this refers to that which exercises power over something, which governs something else. He specified that for Buddhists and non-Buddhists, they don't have the same interpretation of this idea of what governs something else. He clarified that for non-Buddhists, this term refers to divinities that have power and which exercise this power. That is in a non-Buddhist context when they talk about the equivalent of a governing faculty. For non-Buddhists, this refers to divinities who have power and who exercise it. Buddhists don't approach this term with the same meaning. Now we'll continue with the point that is entitled Identification of each governing faculty. We'll begin with the first part of this point, which is the meaning of the term of each governing faculty. We'll look at this meaning from two angles, according to the Vaibhashika tradition and according to the Sauchantika tradition. For the Vaibhashika, the root text begins, stanza 1, first line. 5 govern 4 things. Here, these 5 that are at hand are the 5 sense faculties. They govern 4 things: beauty, protection of the body, unshared designations, the production of moments of consciousness, and mental events. 1. Beauty. 2. Protection of the body. 1. Beauty. 2. Protection of the body. 3. Unshared designations. And 4. The production of moments of consciousness and mental events. Moments of consciousness and mental events. A few explanations. Concerning beauty, why do we say that the 5 sense faculties govern beauty? Because without these 5 sense faculties, the body would not be beautiful. There's no further information. Second point. These 5 govern the protection of the body. There are a few examples. Eye faculty allows us to see dangers that are far away. Because we see them, we are able to protect our body. And the same is true for ear faculty. We hear a threatening sound and we flee. Similarly, for the other faculties, nose, tongue, and body, concerning the example of ingesting food, which allows us to upkeep our body. The third point, these 5 sense faculties govern unshared designations. For example, I saw a visible object. This is a designation that is governed by the eye and not by the ear. Ear faculty governs the designation. Ear hears sounds. Eye faculty does not govern the designation. Oh no, there's a typo. ear faculty does not, no, eye faculty does not govern the designation eye faculty hears. Nose faculty governs the designation nose smells smells. Tongue faculty governs the designation tongue tastes. And body faculty governs the designation body feels tactile phenomena. These 5 faculties govern designations like to see, to hear, to feel, to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, and to feel. In other words, these 5 sense faculties govern acquisition of their own object. Each one respects its own object, or is respective to its own object. Then we come to the 4th point, the production of a moment of consciousness and mental events. Eye faculty governs the production of a moment of visual consciousness. It does not govern the appearance of a moment of auditory consciousness. Based on ear faculty, a moment of auditory consciousness is produced. Each faculty governs the consciousness that is specific to it. So we're still continuing with the point that determines the meaning of each governing faculty. We are explaining it based on the Vaibhashika tradition, and the first line that was just explained states 5 govern 4 things. 5 governing faculties govern 4 things. Now, in the second line, the root text continues, and 4, 2 things, they say. 4 is 4 governing faculties that will govern 2 things. Here, this means that 4 faculties, in other words, masculine faculty, feminine faculty, life force faculty, and mental faculty, each of these governs 2 things. The 4 faculties, which are masculine faculty, feminine faculty, life force faculty, and mental faculty, will each govern 2 things. We'll begin with the first 2, which are masculine faculty and feminine faculty. They each govern 2 things. First, they govern the difference between beings, the distinction between men and women. This is the first thing that is governed by these 2 governing faculties. And the second thing, these will govern the general characteristics of men and women. And there will be some more explanations on this. So, the explanations continue. People who possess male sexual organs are men, and they are distinct from women. And people who possess feminine sexual organs are women and are distinct from men. This is the first thing that masculine and feminine faculty govern. The difference between beings, the distinction between men and women. This is what these two faculties govern. And the second thing that they govern is the general characteristics of men and women. And this will be explained briefly now. Someone who possesses masculine faculty will have a deeper voice, generally a stronger body, a body that doesn't have breasts, and generally will have attachment toward women. These are the general characteristics of masculine faculty. This is once again within the Vaibhashika point of view. Beings who possess feminine faculty generally have a voice that is not as deep, a body that is slimmer, breasts are present, and they generally experience attachment toward men. This concerns masculine and feminine faculty, which govern two things, the two things we've just seen, the distinction between men and women, and the general characteristics of men and women. We saw that 4 govern 2 things. We've looked at the first 2. Now we come to the third, life force faculty. What does this govern? Once again, life force faculty will govern 2 things. It will firstly govern the continuity of life force faculty through death. This is the first thing that this faculty governs. And the second thing is that this faculty governs maintaining within a life, or remaining alive, abiding within an existence. And there are some explanations. When we say that life force faculty governs the continuity of life force faculty through death, what does this mean? It means that at the moment of death, at the moment when life ceases, life force faculty has a continuity through death in the moments following death. What's also known as the intermediate state or the bardo. Following death, the moment of the bardo, there is continuity of this life force faculty. Here we explain that beings of the bardo, beings that are in the bardo, are beings. As they are beings, they possess life force faculty. And what governs this life force faculty is what is called life force faculty. Once again, we're still in the Vaibhashika point of view here. And the second thing that this life force faculty governs is maintaining within an existence. For example, if we are born as an animal, then we will remain an animal for the duration of our lifetime. Why? Because of the presence of life force faculty. If this life force faculty is no longer present, then the being dies. And this is why we say that this life force faculty governs maintaining life. It supports beings remaining within an existence without dying. So these are the two things that life force faculty governs. Then, as the stanza says, and for two things, for governing faculties govern two things. We've looked at the first three governing faculties: masculine faculty, feminine faculty, and life force faculty, each governing two things. Now we come to the fourth, which is mental faculty. Mental faculty likewise governs two things. The first, it governs rebirth. And the second, it governs actions of body and speech that share the same nature with it. It governs rebirth, and it governs actions of body and speech that are of the same nature as itself. There will be explanations. Mental faculty governs connecting with a new existence, being born, taking rebirth. Here we may ask ourselves, what is the factor that brings about going from the bardo to a new existence? Here the answer is that mental consciousness or mental faculty does this. This mental faculty governs this passage between the intermediate state, the bardo, and a new existence. That is the first thing that mental faculty governs. The second is that it governs actions of body and speech that are of the same nature as itself. What does this mean, that they're of the same nature as itself? Actions of body and speech, this we can understand. We'll look at an example. It's fairly simple. Here the example says, if mind is virtuous, then actions of body and speech will be virtuous. If mind is non-virtuous, then actions of body and speech will be non-virtuous. If mind is undefined, actions of body and speech will also be undefined. This is what is referred to in the term actions of body and speech that are of the same nature as itself. Actions that are virtuous, non-virtuous, or undefined. intention is what governs actions of body and speech. We saw that 4 faculties govern 2 things: the lines of the the lines of the root text say, and for 2 things they say. At the end of this line, there is what's called a particle of disagreement. This is what is translated into English as they say. This means that the author, Vasubandhu, what he has expressed in the first 2 lines is the point of view of the Vaibhashika. And with this expression of disagreement at the end of these 2 lines, he shows that he does not agree with the Vaibhashika's point of view. In the section that we're in, we've seen that there are 2 subpoints: the explanation of the meaning of each faculty according to the Vaibhashika, and this same according to the Savchantika. So we began with the Vaibhashika, and here Vasubandhu says that he is not quite in agreement with the Vaibhashika. In this case, Vasubandhu is more on the side of the Savchantika. And we'll see what he does not agree with. For example, when the Vaibhashikas say that the 5 sense faculties govern 4 things, the Savchantika do not agree. Notably, they don't agree with the fact that these 5 faculties govern beauty. For the Savchantika, beauty is not due to the sense faculties. They don't agree. In the same way, the Savchantika do not agree with the fact that the 5 faculties govern the protection of the body. Indeed, when we see danger far off, the faculties are not what sees. Rather, it is visual consciousness that sees. It is visual consciousness that knows, that grasps visible phenomena. For them, it is not the faculty that sees, but rather visual consciousness, and thus they do not agree when the Vaibhashikas say that sense faculties govern the protection of the body. The same is true for the Vaibhashika's 3rd proposition, when they say that the faculties govern the use of expressions like the eye sees, ear hears, these unshared designations, as they were called. The Savchantika do not agree with this. For the Savchantika, eye is not what sees, visual consciousness sees. So they don't agree with the Vaibhashika when they say that the 5 sense faculties govern unshared designations. However, concerning the 4th proposition, when the Vaibhashikas say that the 5 faculties govern 4 things. The 4th is the production of a moment of consciousness, and for this the Sautrantika agree. The Sautrantika agree with the Vaibhashika concerning this last point. And so there are different points of view, which are mainly due to the fact that for the Vaibhashika, the eye is what sees and not visual consciousness, whereas for the Sautrantika, it is not the eye that sees, but rather visual consciousness. Due to this, they do not share the same point of view concerning the 5 sense faculties. These are the disagreements between the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika concerning the first line of the stanza. Now we'll look at the disagreements concerning the second line. The line that reads, "And for 2 things, 4 governing faculties govern 2 things each." Here, when the Vaibhashika say that masculine and feminine faculty govern the differentiation between a man and a woman, the Sautrantika do not accept this either. And they have an argument for this. To justify their disagreement with this point, the Sautrantika cite the example of beings from the beginning of a kalpa, at the beginning of a universe. This brings details about the beginning of the kalpa. It's the argument. There will be many more details about this. These are the first ones we get to hear. The argument that they cite is the fact that at this moment, in the very beginning of a universe, there are men and women, but they did not have masculine and feminine faculty. They didn't have sexual organs. Nevertheless, there were men and women. In the very beginning of the kalpa. All of the descriptions of the beginning and the end of a kalpa are described in the 3rd chapter in detail, with explanations of who populated which places, etc. It's all in the 3rd chapter. So here's a little teaser for that. In any case, there were men and women. Nevertheless, the masculine and feminine faculties were not present. There were no sexual organs. And thus, with this argument, the Sautrantika say that even without the presence of masculine and feminine faculty, there were men and women present. Thus, masculine and feminine faculties are not what govern the difference or the distinction between men and women. However, they agree with the second proposition that masculine and feminine faculties govern the general characteristics of men and women. Now we come to the 3rd line, where we're no longer looking at the Vaibhashika point of view and going into the Sautrantika point of view. We find this in the 3rd and 4th lines of the 1st stanza, which state, "The 5 sensations and the 8 govern the appearance of afflicted phenomena and completely pure phenomena." We'll go over the 5 sensations and the list of 8. So these govern afflicted phenomena and completely pure phenomena. We'll begin with the 5 sensations. These 5 sensations are those that are associated with factors for descent. Now we will look at them in detail fairly quickly. We find pleasant physical sensation, unpleasant physical sensation, pleasant mental sensation, unpleasant mental sensation, and neutral sensation. When we talk about the 5 sensations in the context of the 22 governing faculties, we are talking about these 5. So this gives a little bit of detail when the stanza says the 5 sensations. Then the stanza continues, and the 8 govern the appearance of, etc., etc. So what are these 8? Sorry. The 8 refers to the group of 5 whose first is confidence or trust. This term, the group of 5 whose first is confidence, it comes back often. The inconvenience when we use this terminology is that we remember confidence or trust, but we don't remember the other 4, so I've listed them. So, confidence or trust, joyful perseverance, remembrance, discernment, and meditative absorption. The stanza refers to the 8. So of these 8, we have the group of 5, that makes 5. And the final 3. The final 3 governing faculties, which are the faculty that allows for knowing all that has not been known, the faculty knowledge of all, and the faculty acquired omniscience. These are the last 3 faculties of the list that we saw earlier. And we'll go into a little bit more detail here. We'll begin with the 5 sensations. We listed their names. And these are 5 sensations that are associated with factors for descent. And these 5 sensations govern the appearance of afflictive phenomena, or afflicted phenomena. That's what the stanza says. The 5 sensations, which are associated with factors for descent, and they govern the appearance of afflicted phenomena such as desire, attachment, or any other afflictive obscuration, hatred, aversion, etc. These 5 sensations govern the appearance of afflicted phenomena. And so, for example, based on pleasant sensation, desire, attachment arises. Based on unpleasant sensation, hatred, aversion arises. And based on neutral sensation, ignorance arises. This is what these govern. And so now we have given some details on the 5 sensations. Now we'll look at what's referred to as the 8, which is made up of the group of 5 and the last 3, the final 3 faculties. The group of 5, whose first is confidence or trust, and the final 3 governing faculties, this group of 8 governs completely pure phenomena. In other words, what is beyond samsara. And this is what the stanza says. The 8 govern the appearance of completely pure phenomena. Out of these, or within these 8 faculties, there is a progression concerning the power of each of these 8 faculties. What does this mean? That there is a progression in terms of their power. It means that the group of 5, confidence, joyful effort, remembrance, discernment, and meditative absorption, this group governs the faculty that allows for knowing all that has not been known. The group of 5, whose first is confidence or trust, governs the appearance of the faculty that allows for knowing all that has not been known. This faculty that allows for knowing all that has not been known is the first of the last 3 faculties. And this faculty that allows for knowing all that has not been known itself governs the appearance of the faculty knowledge of all. It governs the appearance of the second faculty of this group of 3. We'll recap at the end. And so this faculty, knowledge of all, the second of the group of 3, governs the appearance of the third faculty of this group of 3, the faculty acquired omniscience. I'll say it again just with the numbers, maybe it'll be easier. There's a group of 5, then there's a group of 3. The group of 5 governs the appearance of the first faculty out of the group of 3. This is what triggers it. Out of the group of 3, once the first has been triggered, it governs the appearance of the second of the group of 3. And the second of the group of 3 governs the appearance of the third of this group of 3. And then there's a little bit more detail given on this group of 3, the last 3 faculties. The faculty that allows for knowing all that has not been known, the faculty knowledge of all, and the faculty acquired omniscience. These 3 faculties, we can recall, they correspond to the paths. The first corresponds to the path of seeing, the second corresponds to the path of familiarization, and the third corresponds to the path of no more learning. These last 3 governing faculties out of the 22 correspond to the last 3 paths. The path of seeing, the path of familiarization, and the path of no more learning. In this stanza, the last 2 lines of the first stanza, we have covered the beginning. Okay, in the first line, we saw the Vaibhashika point of view concerning the faculties. We also saw some disagreement with the Sautrantika in the second line. And we'll take a little break and then look at the Sautrantika point of view. Let's take a short break. All right, let's continue slowly. Now we will look at Sautrantika point of view in and of itself. This brings us to stanza 2, lines 1 and 2. Because they govern focus toward their respective or all objects, the 6 faculties are governing. Because they govern focus toward their respective or all objects, the 6 faculties are governing. Why are these 6 governing faculty? We talked about it a little. For the Sautrantika, I is not what sees, rather visual consciousness sees. To produce a moment of visual consciousness, the primary cause, that which governs a moment of visual consciousness, is I faculty. Thus, it is governing faculty. in order to create a moment of auditory consciousness, ear faculty is the primary cause. It governs a moment of auditory consciousness. In the stanza, we hear toward their respective object. In this case, this refers to the 5 sense faculties in terms of their focus on the visible, sounds, smells, tastes, or tactile phenomena. This part of the line refers to the 5 sense faculties. And then within the stance, we also find or all objects. This refers to mental faculty. And thus we find all 6. This mental faculty is not only focused on the 5 sense objects, but also all knowable phenomena. Mental faculty governs the appearance of a moment of mental consciousness in relation to all objects that may be present. The 5 sense objects, or any other knowable phenomenon within the 6 realms. Because it governs focus, because they govern focus toward their respective objects, or all objects in the case of mental faculty, these 5 sense faculties and mental faculty are said to be governing faculties. They govern the appearance of moments of consciousness. Now we come to lines 3 and 4 of stanza 2. Because they govern masculine or feminine gender, they are classified apart from body faculty as masculine and feminine governing faculties. Because they govern masculine or feminine gender, they are classified apart from body faculty as masculine and feminine governing faculties. We saw that the Sautrantaka do not agree with the Vaibhashika concerning masculine and feminine faculties. They do not accept that these masculine and feminine faculties allow for determining if a person is a man or a woman. They gave the example of beings from the beginning of a kalpa who had no sexual organs and yet were men or women. However, they accept the second point laid out by the Vaibhashika, that these masculine and feminine faculties govern the general characteristics of men and women. With masculine faculty, the body is different. The state of mind may likewise be different. The same is true for feminine faculty. We'll have a different body and potentially a different state of mind. For the Sautrantaka, these two are also governing faculties, They are part of body faculty, but they're classified separately because they are governing in relation to certain aspects, because they govern certain aspects. Now we come to stanza 3. We will look at life force faculty, the 5 sensations, and the group of 5 whose first is confidence or trust. Stanza 3 says, because they govern maintaining life and the appearance of afflicted and completely pure phenomena, life force, sensations, and the group of 5 whose first is confidence are considered governing faculties. We will give some details on these elements. Life force faculty has already been explained. It allows for maintaining life, for maintaining an existence without it stopping. The 5 sensations govern the appearance of afflicted phenomena. This is the same as what we saw earlier. And lastly, the group of 5 faculties whose first is confidence governs the appearance of completely pure phenomena. In other words, what is beyond samsara, which is also what we saw earlier. Now we come to stanza 4 with the last 4 faculties. Because they govern progressively obtaining nirvana, just like the 5 sense faculties, the faculties that allow for knowing all that has not been known, knowledge of all, and acquired omniscience are defined as governing. As was stated earlier, there is a notion of progression concerning these faculties. The first faculty that allows for knowing all that has not been known corresponds to the path of seeing. This first faculty governs the following faculty, knowledge of all, which itself governs the faculty acquired omniscience. And thus, as we saw, concerning the 3 paths in the beginning, there is the path of seeing, which governs the appearance of the path of meditation or familiarization, which in its turn governs the appearance of the path of no more learning. Each governs the following. In this part of the root text, there is a notion of progression, step by step. The path of familiarization comes from which step? From the path of seeing. The path of no more learning comes from which step? The path of familiarization. At the end of all these steps, there is nirvana. In this case, we're talking about nirvana without remainder. These first 4 stanzas present the idea of governing faculty. What makes something a governing faculty? Are there any questions? Earlier, you said that the continuity of, life force faculty governs 2 things, notably the continuity of life force faculty through death and maintaining life. At the moment of death, life force faculty will have continuity through the moment of the bardo. My question is, if life force faculty is very diminished, how does this work before the bardo? Here, in the context of the 22 faculties, life force faculty governs the continuity of life force after the moment of death. This is the first time that we talk about the end of an existence, of the intermediate state between two existences, and then there's another governing faculty that governs rebirth. All of these subjects are covered in great detail in chapter 3, the chapter that talks about the world, the geographical world, and also beings. When we talk about beings, we talk about how they live, how they die, how they are reborn, and what happens between 2 existences. There will be a lot more explanations on this subject then. Nevertheless, with the elements that we have here, when we say that governing faculty it governs 2 things: the continuity of life force faculty through death. At the end of an existence, life force faculty ends. Life force faculty maintains in an existence, and at the moment of death, this life force stops, but at the first moment after death, there is a continuity of a life force. It's not exactly the same because it stopped at the moment of death, but there's a new one that continues in the bardo. This is why Khelzang said here, beings in the bardo are beings. As they are beings, they possess life force faculty. In the bardo, there is the presence of life force faculty, but it is not a life force faculty that is permanent between the moment of life and the moment of death. When we talk about continuity, it means that from moment to moment, there is the presence of life force faculty. But it's not the same one as at the moment of death, because the one at the moment of death stops, so it's a new one? Yes. Maybe now isn't the right time to answer this question, I'll understand. So does this mean that people who are said to be wandering in the bardo have a problem in terms of their life force faculty? It's difficult to answer this question. It's difficult to establish a correlation between the two of them. The fact of having a problem with one's life force faculty and wandering in the bardo. Wandering in the bardo is something that I've heard as well in the teachings. Here, the bardo and the way that beings move from one phase of existence to another will be explained in detail in chapter 3. Just to remind you, what is explained in this chapter is the point of view of the Vaibhashika. So it may be different from what we've heard in previous teachings concerning the bardo, which often come from the tradition of the Great Vehicle. So the way that it is explained in this context may be somewhat different from what we have heard elsewhere. I don't have all of the chapter at hand, and I can't sum it up, but in the 3rd chapter there are many elements concerning this intermediate state between two existences. It seems that you said out of these 6 sense faculties, the mental faculty is included. Did I mistake that? No, indeed, it is presented in this chapter. Often the 6 are grouped together. We call them the 6 sense faculties, but in fact, this refers to the 5 sense faculties plus mental faculty. That is how they are presented in this chapter. On the same subject, when we talk about the bardo, you said that when life force faculty stops, the being dies. So I deduce that a being in the bardo is not the same being, just as the one that will be reborn is not the same as the previous one. With this same reasoning, we can conclude that a being of one moment and a being of a following moment is not the same being. When we talk about continuity, this does not mean the permanence of a phenomena. This doesn't mean permanence over the course of 2 moments. As soon as there is a permanence over the course of 2 moments, it means it's permanent all the time. When we talk about continuity, we're talking about continuity between moments. I'm not trying to avoid your questions, but these are details that we'll find further on. Notably, in chapter 2, the chapter that we're looking at, there are 3 sections. There's the section on governing faculties that gives details on the governing faculties, how they govern, entry and maintaining in samsara, entry and maintaining in nirvana. Then there are 2 following sections, the mode of birth of conditioned phenomena, and here there are many explanations on conditioned phenomena that are either material or non-material, and then there is a 3rd part concerning causes, fruits, and conditions. With these 2 parts that come after, there are many details given about conditioned phenomena. There's a lot more explanations given, notably about continuity. I have another question about the group of 5, which governs the appearance of totally pure, completely pure phenomena. I was wondering if remembrance and discernment couldn't also apply to unpleasant sensations that generate hatred, aversion. And if I find myself in a similar situation, then discernment and remembrance will apply, and then I won't produce a completely pure phenomena. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Here, when we talk about these governing faculties, this group of 5 governing faculties, in the case where they govern unafflicted phenomena, this concerns a group that is virtuous. When we consider some of these 5, in the case where they are associated with non-virtue, that's not the same thing as when we're talking about these 5 governing faculties that govern the first faculty, known as knowledge of all that has not been known. Here, in this case, we're talking about virtuous faculties. I was wondering about what you mentioned concerning the beginning of a kalpa, the beginning of a universe, the moment when beings were not designated based on sexual organs, masculine or feminine. From this moment on, I was wondering, so then why don't we use vocabulary like male or female, which seems to designate a human being, but you were talking about beings. There's something that I'm having a hard time picturing. To reply to this, I think the question is maybe more about the translation, the word in French. What does it actually designate? In our study group, focusing on the Abhidharmakosha, we're not, we don't all know the Tibetan. We use the translations given by the translators. We use the words that have a consensus among the translators. Despite the fact that there may be a word that has a consensus for the moment, it's not something fixed. There can be discussions that lead to an evolution in the terms. This happens often. Questions like this, these are in fact the type of questions that the translators ask amongst themselves when they try to find the terms that are the closest to the notion at hand. But to say that this term is exactly the right term and is appropriate for this, I'm not a translator myself, but from what I understand, there are always pros and cons for any term. These are somewhat the limits of translation, and the challenge is really to understand the idea, to examine and little by little understand the ideas that are at hand. It seems that it wasn't said in the text, but it seems that it was implicit when we talk about the 5 faculties, starting with confidence, I think it seems that this would correspond to the first 2 paths, the path of accumulation and the path of junction. Is this correct? What is said is that these 5 govern the appearance of the path of seeing. That much is certain. Do they correspond to the 2 other paths? We don't have further elements. Nevertheless, they govern the appearance of the path of seeing. My question concerns stanza 4. It talks about the last 3 governing faculties. It's said that they govern progressively obtaining nirvana, just like the 5 sense faculties. I don't understand, because above we said that the 5 sense faculties are associated with factors for descent. They're linked with contaminated phenomena. It seems, in fact, we asked ourselves the same question. It seems to us that we saw that the 5 sense faculties govern the appearance of samsara, totally afflicted phenomena. In the same way, but the inverse, the opposite, these 3 govern completely pure phenomena. In relation to the governing faculties that govern something, either on their own or as a group, there will be more details about them. For the moment, we're talking about those that govern samsara, those that govern nirvana, and this is laid out here because it will be explained further on. For the moment, with the elements that are given, we can deduce certain things, but there's not enough information to arrive at a certainty. Further information will come as we continue that will make these aspects more explicit. Which group governs entry to one path or a certain faculty, concerning the group of 5 and the last 3 governing faculties. It's something that is detailed progressively. If there are no further questions, we have concluded the point entitled Meaning of the Term of Each Governing Faculty. We concluded this part, and tomorrow we will continue with the point that is entitled Precise Number. We'll look at this according to the Vaibhashika tradition and according to the Sauchantika tradition. Sanamdi tamche zepani tamne petranam palchene kigana chi balak chupai sipe sone chowa chowa sho